Hello, friends. Here we go with a Wednesday edition of Inside Coverage on Yahoo. My name is Andrew Siciliano. Thank you for watching. However it is you're watching or listening to the show, if it's in podcast form, like and subscribe and share it with your friends. If you're watching on the Yahoo app or on the Yahoo YouTube page or on the Yahoo Fast channel, yahoosports.tv, we thank you for doing it that way, visually. I'm sitting in the home office in Los Angeles. We are here Monday through Thursday with the how and the why, any and everything you need to know in the National Football League as we get ready for week number 3. Wednesday is officially the day that we turn the page to a new week. And with that, I will turn the page to my friends here from Yahoo who cover the NFL and give you the how and the why better than anyone in the business. First off, let's go east to west. Jori Epstein, how the heck is New York today?
East to west, that is good. New York is rainy today, but not too cold. Okay. So we still got a run in. Love the run in the rain. So I would say we are doing just fine. And the city's probably doing better than its football teams right now.
Okay, the football team's not good. When was the last time New York had a quarterback, by the way? We'll dive into that in a little bit. I was just thinking of that on my run this morning, and it's like 74 here and lovely. Not that everyone needs traffic and weather, but Frank, how's the map says Colorado behind you? How's Colorado, Frank?
Castle Rock is beautiful these days, as it usually is in Colorado. So, doing better than the baseball team out here. So that's always good. Yes, doing well in Colorado. Just worried that we're going to get snow in a week or something, because that's how it goes here.
Can't wait. In Cleveland this weekend, it's going to be like 85 degrees for a football game.
What?
They're going to be wearing brown helmets.
Oh.
Yep, and brown jerseys. It's going to be fantastic. I love the helmets, by the way. Or the brown pants and the white jerseys. I can't remember, but the helmets look good. They're the Alpha Dog helmets. We'll get to that in a little bit. The story today is, once again, the quarterback injuries and the backup quarterbacks that are going to have to play week number 3. Now, there was some good news out of Santa Clara, where Brock Purdy is limited today in practice, which is better than last week, in which he did not play, and Mac Jones started, and they went to New Orleans, and the Niners actually beat the Saints. This week for the 49ers, big game. They're at home. It's a battle of 2-0 teams in the NFC West, with Kyler and the Cardinals coming to town. Now, for now, it still looks like Mac Jones. However, Kyle Shanahan said there is at least a chance that Purdy is going to be able to go. There is no chance that Justin Fields is going to be able to go, as somewhat surprisingly, Aaron Glenn declared his quarterback out on a Wednesday. Now, he's in concussion protocol, but rarely, look, it's unlikely that a quarterback in concussion protocol can get through it in a week, but rarely does a coach come out on a Wednesday and say, nope, he's not playing. So that means Tyrod Taylor is going to get the go. In Minnesota, it's going to be Carson Wentz playing for the team he rooted for as a kid. In Cincinnati, it is going to be Jake Browning. We know that. No word yet on if Joe Burrow is back for the season or the end of the season, as Zach Taylor wouldn't really give any insight on that today. He hasn't even had the surgery. And in Washington, Jaden Daniels is not practicing, and he is not expected to practice tomorrow, which means, again, we're looking at 5 quarterbacks potentially that could be out here for week number 3, which would run the total, everybody, up to 37 different starting quarterbacks. Last year we had 59 starting quarterbacks. We're at 37 potentially heading into week number 3. I would want to call this a crisis, something that nobody could ever have projected, except, again, Frank, when you look at the number from a year ago, this is exactly what we are now getting used to. Backup quarterback, and Jori and I discussed this a lot yesterday, is, in my opinion, the most important position in the National Football League. I'm going to take Kirk Cousins out of it because he's making $27.5 this year. His cap number is 40. Beyond Kirk Cousins, and we'll take Deshaun Watson out of it. Frank, I'll let you go first. Do you know who the highest paid in terms of cash this year, backup, legit backup quarterback is?
Might it be Garoppolo? Because I know the Rams do really value that position, and Garoppolo's.
It's a good guess.
Success.
It is not Jim Garoppolo, who's making $3 million. And honestly, he should have gone to Miami and done a reality show. Like, I get it. He wants to be here in LA, but go back up Tua. Like bring his brother, bring the whole Garoppolo family and sell it as a show. But that's a different idea. Guess again.
Oh man, you gotta keep making me guess. I don't think it was Wentz. He signed really late. Not Bajent.
It's not Wentz.
Jones wouldn't be considered a backup anymore.
Kirk would be too easy, right?
Kirk is way too easy. Kirk is obvious. Yes,
I already took him out of it. He is the answer. But I'm saying, like, we are signing you as a backup. Here's a paycheck.
It might be Mariota. Is it Mariota?
It is Marcus Mariota.
There you go.
And he is going to get
I mispronounced it, but yeah.
Week 3.
What's
Mariota,
he making compared to Jameis?
Quarterback 2 years ago. Jameis
has got to be the highest paid third string quarterback, right?
Yeah, he has to be, even though he made
Jameis is making like $3 million, if that.
It's crazy.
Not
but
even.
For a third string quarterback?
It's
I
great
know we're
money.
getting in the weeds here, which is one of my favorite things
we're getting
to
in
do
the weeds.
in life.
Jameis is making, his cap number is 3, his cash spent is 4. I guess, Frank, what I'm getting at is that why don't more teams, and the answer is probably because I'm spending so much money on my number 1 guy, why don't more teams say, I'm going to write a legitimate check and pay a legitimate backup?
Yeah, and I think part of it is because you don't have 32 good backups, so are you going to pay the 25th best backup good money? When you miss out on the game of musical chairs, that's a problem. But yes, backup quarterback is extremely valuable in this league. We're seeing why, because it's a short season. If you lose your starter for 4 games, that's 25-ish% of the season that somebody else has to play quarterback and get you through that. And you hope you don't go 0-4. Look what the Dolphins went through whenever Tua hasn't played. Like their offense just falls off a cliff and their season's ruined because of it. And I say this a million times. People can get sick of me saying this. That's fine. When you have these fantasy conversations about, oh, this team is going to trade for Kirk Cousins. Oh, this team is going to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. Oh, the teams don't trade their backup quarterbacks. There's sometimes that situation arises where it makes sense. But teams actually value those guys. They pay them. They want them. It's an insurance policy, sometimes an unnecessary insurance policy. But teams take backup quarterback very seriously. One real quick thought before I pitch it to you, Jori. I wonder if this is a rookie head coaching mistake by Aaron Glenn. Because I'm usually rolling my eyes at the whole, like, we're not going to tell you who's starting this week. We don't know if Cam Ward's our quarterback 1 in week 1, like stuff like that. But everybody knows, like, like the quarterback could make it into concussion protocol or whatever. Him ruling Justin Fields out on Wednesday, I would think that their opponent this week, the Buccaneers, is like, oh, good, we don't have to even worry about Justin Fields in film review. We're just spending all of our time on Tyrod Taylor, whereas they would have had to split that time. That's a different subject, Jori. To you, we both have talked about over and over, backup quarterback is an incredibly valued position in the NFL.
Backup quarterback definitely is. And I've mentioned on the show before that I once had a general manager tell me they thought it was the top 11 position on the roster. So not quarterback being 11th out of the 22 guys on the field, but your backup quarterback being 11th, being higher than 10 plus guys on the field in terms of how you should invest. I would argue in terms of the amount of money spent. Obviously, there is still a rookie wage scale in the NFL. And so I would say that there are different ways you can invest greatly in your backup quarterback. And if you're the Giants and you spent a first round pick on Jackson Dart, I would argue that you still invested in your backup quarterback. If you're the Saints and you took a second round pick and you put it towards Tyler Shuck, you did that. And I think a lot of teams would say, we want at least one of our top 2 guys to be on a rookie quarterback. Love it for them if they have both of them, because that is one of the best market inefficiencies you can exploit in the NFL and the salary cap era if you have it. But I think that they say, well, not only can you get them for cheaper, but on top of that, you can try and develop a guy. And if you have a Jimmy Garoppolo situation, it works out pretty well for you in terms of what your assets can do for you.
Yeah, and if you look at it, and we had the numbers from SpoTrack up there, and by the way, my numbers are here from Over the Cap, OTC, which I usually use for most of our financial dealings here on the show. You see Michael Penix and Bo Nix, and I mentioned Jaden Daniels with Marcus Mariota making $8 million. Those 3 teams, Denver, Atlanta was in a backwards kind of way to getting there, and Washington were all able to spend legit money on their backup quarterback because, Jori, to your point, they have such low cap numbers for their rookie quarterbacks, or quarterbacks rather, on rookie contracts. Now, like for example, Cam Ward's getting $32 million in cash this year because he's in year number 1 of his deal. He was the number 1 overall pick, and that's a massive cash settlement up front there. But those other teams are in a window to win now because you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, so you can go out and you could spend that money. But there are other teams like that aren't in that situation, like Jacoby Brissett, for example, or Tyrod Taylor with the Jets. Tyrod has a cap number of 6.8. He's getting $6 million in cash this year, and they need him week number 3. In Arizona, where 2 years ago Kyler Murray got his big deal, they are paying Jacoby Brissett $7 million in cash and 5.3 on the cap. There are situations where teams are just like, we're going to go out there and spend the money because we realize that if we lose our guy and we need to get through a couple of games, it pays to have that veteran rather than having to rush to the phone and overpay for, someone's third or even second, Frank, that the team is willing to get rid of at a far higher price than they actually should get in return.
Yes, right. And just think of some of the examples through NFL history of teams that have been bailed out by their backup quarterbacks. I think the obvious ones
Nick
Foles, Jeff Hostetler, Earl Morrall in 1972, Doug Williams. It goes on and on. The example I always give, because it's not quite as obvious as those, the 2015 Denver Broncos do not win the Super Bowl without what Brock Osweiler did that year. You can make all the jokes you want about Brock Osweiler right now. The Denver Broncos would not have had the number 1 seed without what Brock Osweiler did when Peyton Manning was hurt. And they probably wouldn't win that game in New England, that AFC Championship game. The Denver Broncos invested a second-round pick in Brock Osweiler. Do you think they regretted that? Heck no. And the other examples of Foles and all that kind of stuff. So, yes, absolutely. It's one of those things where if you do have a guy in his rookie deal, you have a little bit of extra money to go out and pay for a Marcus Mariota. Let's say, I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to miss more than 1 week. I don't even know if he's going to miss 1 week. But 1 week, let's say Marcus Mariota plays against the Raiders this week. They get a win because he plays pretty well, because he's capable of that. He's been a starter in the league before. And then the Commanders get into the playoffs by a tiebreaker at the end, 7th seed in the NFC, whatever it's going to be. Isn't that worth the investment? 100%. And I think teams realize this. They've seen it over and over and over again. If your quarterback goes down and you are incapable of winning a game, your entire season could be blown up, even in just one game. We're only talking about 17 games here.
Well, and I would also argue that in addition to finding a good backup quarterback, the new way that teams are trying to often do this is, who's the guy who we believed in from the time they were drafted? They didn't have success with their first team, or in Baker Mayfield's situation, his first, second, and third team. But we think if we get him in our offense, it'll work. And again, we'll see if Daniel Jones ends up being one of these. Sam Darnold had this last year. That is actually another way. So when you talk about the amount of money that Tyrod Taylor's making, again, $6-7 million, well, Justin Fields isn't making $40 million or $60 million the way that some of the quarterbacks around the league is. He's making $20 million this year because he is on his third team, and they're trying to figure out if they can rehabilitate him. And when the guy needs you the same way you need him, you'll be able to get him for a different level. But I think Frank put up a good point in terms of Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor and giving them that information on Wednesday, because with any team, you don't want to give that information out early. And I would always laugh when we were in Dallas and I was covering the Cowboys, and Mike McCarthy would try so hard not to say whether the left tackle was playing, whether Tyron Smith was going to be active. And then Jerry Jones would go on the radio on Tuesday and give away the information, or sometimes Friday. That said, I actually think this is an even bigger deal for the Jets than with many quarterbacks, because a lot of times guys, or teams, I should say, try to have a backup quarterback whose style of play resembles that of their starter. Well, Tyrod Taylor does not have the same mobility and skill set with Justin Fields. And while I'm not saying they're going to run a different offense, I would say that they would accentuate completely different parts of the playbook. I think we should totally expect that against the Buccaneers this week. So if you should actually believe that, well, now the Buccaneers don't have to prepare for what we saw in week 1 when Justin Fields was running that very successful run offense.
And if you look at it from this angle, and I'm with you too on the coach thing. I mean, there are some coaches that will not even admit to having met the player in question. Hey, is so-and-so going to play? I don't even know
who's
who
that guy?
is.
Yeah.
Right. There's some coaches that'll play that card.
That quarterback in Detroit, if you've never heard of him.
Yeah, exactly. But what Aaron Glenn did do is start the hype train early on a Wednesday at that. Thank you, Aaron, for the 2018 Browns quarterback reunion here with Baker Mayfield playing against Tyrod Taylor, the man that he replaced in week 3, 2018 for his resounding off-the-bench, break the beer out of the coolers victory on Thursday Night Football when the Browns beat the Jets. And to this day, the kids screaming in the driveway behind me playing football that you cannot hear thanks to this wonderful directional microphone. To this day, the kids in that driveway still say Mr. Andrew, what were you screaming so loudly about that night? And I say,
what a fun!
That is
fun
Browns winning a
throwback.
football
Oh
game.
boy!
They were winning a football game.
But Andrew, I'm glad also that you brought up just the different quarterbacks that we see from different teams, because I did actually look up on True Media, thanks to Jason Starrett, our Yahoo partner over at True Media, helping me out. I was trying to understand, when we have 5 teams that are already missing their starting quarterback by week 3, how rare is that? And this is the 4th time since 2000 that 5 or more, or sorry, I should say only 3 times since 2000 have more than 5 teams had quarterbacks starting in the first 3 weeks. So there were a couple of years when 7 quarterbacks started for 7 teams had 3 quarter. I'm really flopping this. There were twice did we have 7 different teams have to start multiple quarterbacks in the first 3 weeks of the season. Once 6 different teams had to, and then there were a few times when we had 5 different teams. Now, I haven't yet looked into how of that is injury. I started going down and I'm like, okay, mono for Sam Darnold. Do we count that as an injury? How do we go about that? I guess it's a non-football injury. So there is a little bit of information that we need to contextualize this data with. But the point being, it is not usual to have this many teams have injured starting quarterbacks at this place in the season.
I do think that sometimes it is a very small runway to land on here. I do sometimes think teams can benefit from playing without their starting quarterback for a little bit. Because you look at San Francisco right now. How confident do they feel? Hey, we just went on the road and beat the Saints with our backup quarterback. Mac Jones played well for us. When Brock Purdy comes back, we're going to be even better. Look at all the adversity we faced in week 2, maybe week 3, 4. Who knows how long Purdy's going to be out? I think that can really help a team down the road. Now, you don't want to lose a guy for 6 weeks. You don't want to lose a guy for a month and have your offense have the wheels fall off. I get all that. But there are certain instances where a team playing with a backup quarterback can really rally around each other and figure out how good they are. Guys step up into different roles. I think it can be a long-term benefit for teams in a rare situation.
Yeah, it certainly can here. And go ahead, Jori.
I think Minnesota is probably top of that list of like, oh, JJ McCarthy, what you saw from him week 2 was a bit of a concern. Now, again, I mean, week 1 was mostly a concern other than the way that they ended the game. And so if Carson Wentz were to catch fire, I mean, that could revolutionize or spark that team in a different way. And it would be a little bit interesting if we had that happen to the Eagles when Carson Wentz got hurt all these years ago. And then now, Carson Wentz has his opportunity to do what Nick Foles did. I'm not saying all the way to the Super Bowl there yet, but that team is a very talented team.
No, it certainly is a very talented team here, and we've already gone down the road of, hey, what happens if Carson Wentz does well for a couple of weeks, and now he's going to be the guy that gets paid next year as opposed to being the guy that comes in and mops up in week 18, as he has done in consecutive years for the Chiefs, and before that, the Rams, when both of those two teams are sitting their starters knowing that they already have their playoff positioning, for the most part, figured out. All right, do you have time and room in your head for more Tom Brady? Of course you do. Coming up next, what 2 NFL head coaches said today on the podium about whether or not they think it's a conflict of interest to have Brady in the suite with the headset on, talking to coaches. That's coming up next. Frank, Jori, I'm Andrew. This is Inside Coverage. It's Inside Coverage here on Yahoo. I'm Andrew Siciliano, Jori Epstein, and Frank Schwab with me as well. We talked a lot yesterday about Tom Brady and the headset and the conflict of interest and the production meetings and all this. Well, Ben Johnson and the Bears are right in the center of this conversation here, because this week, Brady and Kevin Burkhardt and Aaron Andrews and Tom Rinaldi are calling the Bears and the Lions. And then next week, Ben Johnson's Bears will play Tom Brady's Raiders. Today, Ben was asked about that.
You have Tom Brady on the call this week, and then he's affiliated with the Raiders, obviously, who you play next week. Are you going to do that pre-production meeting? And get careful kind of how much you divulge.
I mean, I've been careful everything I've said since the season started. I've been in pure coach speak mode started. So to me, it's just business as usual. I'm just fine. I like Tom, and we have a really good relationship. So, like I said, I'm really not worried about it. I mean, we change week to week in terms of what we do. Schematically, he's going to be able to turn on the tape and see what everyone else in the world's seeing right now. Personnel-wise, really the same thing. It's not like I'm going to sit down with him and tell, hey, don't do this to Caleb Williams or you might get it. Like, I'm not going to, there's not going to be any trade secrets that are going to be exchanged. But I really don't think it's that big of a deal, to be honest with you.
All right. So I was watching that live, and I couldn't figure out why the room thought his initial comment was so funny. I still don't get why they laughed that hard, but I do accept that I respect Ben Johnson for his answer there. Jori and I had an hour on this yesterday. Frank, what do you think about this whole thing?
I think it's clearly just bad optics. And whether Ben Johnson and Andrew, you can speak on this better than me, but I think for people out there, you guys probably discuss this. Production meetings are different than him being at the podium. Yes, he goes into full coach speak mode on the podium. Production meetings are a totally different deal. Coaches and players are very relaxed. This stuff is semi off the record. They know that tidbits are going to be used in the broadcast or whatever. They're much more open about this guy's not playing well. This guy's injured. Yeah, we're probably not going to re-sign this guy. Whatever it is, they're just a little more open with the broadcast teams with this understanding that the very sensitive subject matter is not going to get out there on the broadcast, but you'll use some of this stuff. It's all for background. That's just so for Ben Johnson to say that is a little weird to me because usually production meetings aren't like that. And then it's unavoidable that if Tom Brady's in a production meeting, even remotely, as he's allowed to do, it's impossible for him to turn off the fact that here's a minority owner of the Raiders who is in the press box with a headset on. Like, of course there's a conflict of interest here. And if not, even if we've all agreed we're not going to tell Tom Brady any sensitive information, it's just a bad look. But what can the NFL do? I look at it this way too. Fox has paid a lot of money for the broadcasting rights to the NFL, and they want Tom Brady as their number one guy. Paid him $300 million to do it. They're not going to tell Fox, you need to get this guy off the broadcast. So when the NFL owners allowed Tom Brady to become a minority owner, this comes with the program. Like Tom Brady is going to be involved in their business. It's been kind of messy from the beginning, and I don't like it. I just think it's a bad look, regardless of how much information these coaches are actually giving Tom.
I was hoping that Frank would come on here and tell us that he thought that the NFL was going to pay Tom Brady's $37.5 million per year buyout so that there was no longer this conflict of interest. So come on, Frank.
It's your buyout too,
but
Jori.
I will note
I've heard that's yours.
Yeah. Please, if you can figure out how to make that true, let me know. We will have some new lighting in here, all of the things. But I'll note two things. I don't think we should be surprised about the way that Ben Johnson handled this. I think most coaches don't want to say publicly, like, yeah, I'm afraid Brady's going to figure out how to outcompete me. And they also don't want to say I'm giving away state secrets. I don't know that anything they say at the podium actually reflects the conversation. It might, but I think that they're just like, I mean, even going back to the laughter in the room, I think part of it was because for a guy as serious as Ben Johnson, even Ben Johnson realized his best option in this awkward, strange situation was just to make light of it all and be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go into coach speak mode. I don't think that. I will note that of the 9 people I talked to for that story, including 3 coaches and 6 executives, some of whom have been in these meetings, they did say that they were not concerned about this. Like, the people who were concerned were actually not the ones in these production meetings. And I think that is in large part because they feel like Tom Brady is a good enough football mind. He's going to figure out a lot of this on his own. I still stand by the fact that the NFL has given Tom Brady a different set of rules and should just acknowledge that rather than pretending that we're all playing by the same set of rules. And then Tom Brady is within his right to play by the set of rules that the NFL is allowing him. And by the way, until the Raiders get super competitive, I don't think anyone's going to care enough to do something about this.
Tip of the cap to front of the program. Kyle Brandt on GMFB this morning said, you know what my thought on this is? If Tom Brady's helping, why were the Raiders so horrible offensively on Monday night?
Right.
Like, he clearly isn't helping that much. Like, he's got the headset on and they can't figure out Jesse Minter's defense. So, like, what is going on here? Which I kind of agreed and I laughed at. Brian Schottenheimer today, and I'm reading here from my tablet off camera, he was asked the same thing. He said in Dallas, everybody has everybody's playbook, which I found interesting. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but everybody knows somebody that knows somebody that's been someplace. I don't have a problem with it. I'll talk football with anybody. Shotty has, I think, been great on the podium. And anyone who knows Brian Schottenheimer loves the guy and talked to him for 5 minutes, and you're rooting for him here. He is right, though. The incestuous level, or just let's phrase it differently. The crossover between staffs every week for every game would blow you away. You just look at the media notes, the game notes printed by each of the 32 teams, as they get ready each week. Hey, here are the crossovers. This guy played with this guy, and this guy was a quality control coach 20 years ago for this team when this coach was there, and he was an OC. Like, everybody truly does know everybody. Shotty is right with that. I do think there's some finer points about practice and game planning and who's ready and who's up and who's down and who's got a sore knee, but the team is actually calling it a sore ankle. That stuff truly does matter. I also think there's another layer here. And I stressed yesterday that I don't question Tom Brady's integrity, and I will never be one, ever. Like, and this has been my thing forever. And a lot of people that don't do this, but I will not get on Twitter and question other broadcasters. Like, I'm not in the media world. Like, snark is not analysis. I just get away from the keyboard. People want to take shots. I don't do that. But during the NFC divisional round last year, when it was the Lions and the Commanders, if you remember at the time, if the Lions were to lose, then Ben Johnson likely becomes a head coach somewhere. And a lot of people thought that Ben would go to Vegas. There are a lot of people that thought that Brady had to pull back and Brady wasn't going to criticize the Lions because I think Ben Johnson had interviewed that week and he didn't want to ruffle any feathers. Brady wanted to make sure that Ben Johnson would be the guy in Vegas. Now, am I remembering that right? I don't think it truly affected the broadcast. It didn't affect, I mean, I couldn't care less. But there are, like you said, Jori, a lot. There's so many layers to this because this is so unprecedented.
I think it did affect the broadcast, and I think a lot of people remember the broadcast for that reason. I mean, similar to, I joked about it earlier on the show, Ben Johnson not saying Jared Goff's name when he mentioned the quarterback last week, when Tom Brady was like almost going out of his way to not mention Ben Johnson when clearly Ben Johnson was one of the hottest stories of last January. I think it was very apparent and very awkward. And so I think there's that element in terms of what he's actually talking about. And Andrew, I think you actually brought up the best point I've heard so far in terms of this conflict, because I don't think the conflict is, hey, here's what we're going to run this week against the Cowboys if you're the Chicago Bears, because I think Brady's smart enough to figure out most of this on his own, and he still isn't out there playing. And I had two sources be like, hey, as long as we don't have to play him against quarterback, we don't care what he knows about our game plan. I will say, though, the injury part is a great point, because if you're the Chicago Bears without, let's say, cornerback Jalen Johnson, and you're likely going to tell the broadcast team, but not necessarily the national media and the bettors and all of that, hey, it's actually a 3-week injury, probably not a 1-week injury. Well, if the Raiders game is 2 weeks out, that matters. So that's probably the best piece of information that Tom Brady would be able to use to help his coaches and staff game plan. And that is the type of thing where I think then the team has to say, okay, Ben Johnson, Tom, I can't get into that one with you. And I don't think that will drastically impact the broadcast, but it does greatly reflect the conflict of interest.
And there is something to be said, I think, about the most minute of details actually matter in the NFL. And we can sit here and say, yeah, oh, this guy's been on this staff and they know each other and they know the playbooks. And I know these guys got to say that on a podium. We've all been covering the NFL long enough to know these coaches are maniacal about every single detail, every bit of information they can get. Who did Tom Brady play for? He played for Bill Belichick, one of the greatest NFL coaches of all time. Bill Belichick would go get guys off the practice squad of other teams, bring them in. Like that week that they played. Remember that? Remember when that was going on? He didn't do it for no reason. There is information to be gleaned and it can be valuable. I think that what you talked about Jalen Johnson is a great example of something that's said in a production meeting. Yeah, you know what, guys, we're listing him as questionable, but we know he's not going to be able to go this week and he's probably going to be gone for 3 weeks. If Brady's in that room, you probably don't say it for one. But if you do, that all of a sudden gives the Raiders an edge that no other team has. None of the other 31 teams has that edge. It's not like Jed York is sitting in on production meetings before the 49ers play somebody, right? Like, so it's just, yes, it hasn't paid off for the Raiders yet, but I think if you ask anybody we cover in the NFL, do these little information things actually help you? They would all say yes, because they're absolutely paranoid, maniacal, everything about every bit of information they can get.
I think we have a solve for this here. I think what all of the other NFL teams need to do is go hire one of the national broadcasters as a limited partner. Like if you're the Cowboys, get Troy Aikman to buy a small stake in your team. If you're the Panthers, have Greg Olsen do this. Like rather than being annoyed that Tom Brady is getting to live by this dual allegiance, why don't you just get your own guy to do your dual allegiance, or woman, I should say, Melissa Stark, whoever it is.
It would be great. I would love this trend.
I mean, the Browns have brought on Charles Woodson, right? Okay, so like very, very, very limited partner. Browns Packers this week. Oh, by the way, the Dolphins. Who do the Dolphins? The Dolphins have like Serena, right? Would that factor?
But she's not.
She's still a limited partner
wonderful,
there.
but not broadcasting. I don't think
She's
awesome.
amazing.
CBS just
Right
makes
now.
her a sideline reporter next week. That'd be great.
Yeah,
Mark Anthony down on the sideline.
you can't beat him.
let's
Join
do
him.
that
I'm
as
just
well.
saying.
Let me say this too. Back in the owners' meetings, the annual meeting, as we call it. It's not the owners' meetings; it's the annual meeting. Back at the annual meeting in March, I was in the session on Friday where Serena. Was it Friday? No, Sunday. I'm losing track of days. Regardless, no one cares. Where Serena was up there on stage, I had never heard Serena talk. She's a bad, you know what? Like, I walked away going, wow. I am absolutely impressed. All right, let's change topics here. I'm also impressed with what Frank wrote about the Houston Texans. You can read it now online at Yahoo. Frank should tweet it out a little bit later as well to help the pod. I'm sure you already have, but let's do it again, Frank. Frank, you are pushing back against this idea that like CJ Stroud has somehow hit a third-year wall, and you instead are saying that it's the Texans who are failing CJ Stroud. Tell me why.
I think this is right now one of the most not talked about stories going on in the NFL. What have I heard the past 3 days? Oh, the Cincinnati Bengals have totally failed Joe Burrow. They can't protect him. They didn't put anybody else around him. Think about the Texans versus the Bengals. The Texans have the worst offensive line in football, far worse than Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. The Cincinnati Bengals have far better receivers than the Houston Texans have. The Cincinnati Bengals have far better running game than the Houston Texans have. Okay? Like what the Houston Texans, who were a miserable franchise, by the way, before CJ Stroud got there, is doing to Stroud is borderline criminal. They are ruining this kid. I have all the respect for CJ Stroud, and it's rare where I just say, you know what? It's not your fault at all. I think it's maybe not 0% on CJ Stroud, but it's pretty close to 0. I just look at this situation as, what can he do? We've watched that offense now for not just 2 weeks, but a full year. They can't block for him. They can't run to help him out. Other than Nico Collins, they don't have any difference makers in the passing game yet. Maybe some of these rookies develop. I get that. But it is just, they went into this season, look, they traded Laramie Tunsil. They got rid of a couple other linemen. It's like, our line was so bad, we just had to destroy it. Okay, I get that, but you didn't do anything to improve it. You didn't really pour any resources into fixing your line. You hired an offensive coordinator, and that's great, but you also need some horses to run this offense. I just think what the Texans are doing to CJ Stroud is going to start becoming a story. I don't think the Texans are going to be very good this year. I just think they have so many deficiencies that they're not going to be able to fix it. And then we're going to be saying, I've even heard it already this season. Oh, it's CJ Stroud. Maybe he was just a fluke, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And people, I don't think that's the case at all. I just think we're watching in real time a player be absolutely failed by the organization that drafted him. They are not doing right by him. And if CJ Stroud does not make it, if he doesn't live up to that promise he showed his rookie year, I'll blame the Texans in this era for not doing enough to help him.
Did you think that the Commanders failed Jaden Daniels his rookie year with the people that were put around him?
No, because I think that you can only do so much in one offseason, but this is multiple off seasons. And the Texans knew after CJ Stroud's first year, look, we have an elite quarterback on his rookie deal. Every other team goes into this kind of warp speed mode of let's build around him like the Commanders did this season. They went and traded for Debo. They traded for Laramie Tunsil, made other improvements within the draft. I don't see that from the Texans. What have the Texans done to help him? I mean, they lost 2 of their 3 receivers in the offseason. It really did. I traded a 7th round pick for Christian Kirk. Like, okay. Like, I look
drafted
at
2.
They did, but depending on receivers outside the first round.
2.
They did.
No, I totally get that. They have reworked their offensive line, but to your point, it hasn't worked, right? It is early. It's 2 games. It has not worked. They brought in the new OC. They got rid of Bobby Slowick, who, look, 2 years ago, Bobby Slowick was interviewing for head coaching jobs.
Supposed to be the man, right?
So, yeah, they decided it didn't work and they tore it down. I'm with you, Frank. It has not worked yet. You point out they've scored 2 touchdowns on 18 possessions, not including a kneel down. One of those touchdowns came on a short drive after a long punt return. There was another one, the Nick Chubb touchdown. It looked as if the Buccaneers let them score to get the ball back late Monday night. Todd Bowles was pressed on that today, and he would, there's an example of a coach that won't say it on the podium. He would not admit whether they did or didn't. It didn't matter. They scored. So I think they've tried. But I agree with you.
I don't think they have.
So far,
I don't think they have,
hasn't
honestly.
worked.
I'll be honest. I just
in some ways, I almost feel like they tried too hard. Because I think that when you look at it, when they got rid of Bobby Slowick and brought in Nick Caley, and I know it's still early for Nick Caley, I think they overreacted to 1 year on offense when really the offensive line to me is the main issue the Texans have. And I wouldn't even say that they're not doing anything about it necessarily. I would more say that the NFL has an offensive line problem. A lot of teams are being impacted by this. The Texans are one of them and probably the most, I don't know about the most egregious, but they are probably up there in the top 5 or so most egregious situations where if you do not have an offensive line, you can't run the rest of your offense. Yes, there's probably going to be some changes because there's an explosiveness that came from that Shanahan scheme when you still had Bobby Slowick in there that you're probably not going to see with this new design that we're getting from Nick Caley. But I think that, if anything, okay, if you wanted that, why did you get rid of Bobby Slowick when 50% of his years were great, I would say. I think that it was and I don't know all of the behind the scenes dynamics in terms of the emotions of what went wrong, but I think there is an element of that. Now, I will say that CJ Stroud seems to know something he doesn't want to say, because if you watch his podium today on Wednesday, there were a lot of times when the media was asking him questions and asking about his process and, hey, what do you do after a game like this? And he was like, look, I know that your job as the media is to ask me about my process when we lose and to celebrate and ask me why I'm doing great when I win. I'm not going to give all of those reasons up here, but I have my reasons why I think of each of these things happened. He kind of pulled that line that we often see from coaches and players, that he doesn't think all of those non-touchdown possessions were because of the same reasons. I also got the sense from some of what he was saying about not getting a lot of reps with his receivers that some of this could be a communication element of like, hey, if you throw the ball where it's supposed to be and the guy's not there, then that always, I mean, that looks like you had an incompletion, but we know that that can be more than that. And so I think there's more than that. I would also say it's been 2 weeks and they played the Rams and the Bucs, both of whom I think are likely to make the playoffs. So let's give it a second.
But it is not just 2 weeks. It's 19 weeks because
It's
they were
last
this
year.
team last season too. Like that offensive line was trash.
But they
last
made
year.
changes
And
since then.
It's number 30 and no good ones though. Yes, they got players, but Ed Ingram, all of the guys they acquired were basically in the bottom third of Pro Football Focus's grades. And I know PFS grades are not gospel, but they basically got retreads. They didn't really, the Vikings were proactive. The Bears were proactive for their quarterbacks. The Texans, I thought, were very, well, we're going to trade Laramie Tunsil and just bring a bunch of guys in and figure it out. I just worry about this whole situation. If you look at the Houston Texans offense right now, Nico Collins is awesome. I think CJ Stroud is still awesome. The other 9 guys are all below average. I think that's just the truth. Like, I don't know you have another above average starter on offense with CJ Stroud. And I think that's why we're seeing CJ Stroud struggle so much. And some of it is on him. He's probably pressing. He's not playing well under pressure, all that kind of stuff. That he does bear some responsibility for this. I put it more on the front office. I just don't think they're doing enough for him right now.
A couple of
Frank,
points
you know
here.
that you said-
Number one, real quick here, Jori. Number one, the Commanders and the Bears so far, the Bears and the Vikings did spend a lot of money on name guys that haven't necessarily gelled those two offensive lines through 2 weeks. I'm with you here on the parts. I think they're recycling veteran parts there to a degree in Houston. I also go back to the conversation that I had with CJ Stroud that we aired here leading into week 1. And I wish it had been one of those 30-minute off-season sit-downs, because part of it almost felt like a mental health conversation was brewing, because he kind of pulled back the curtain a little bit and let us in and talked about how, I guess, some people think I'm not as good a quarterback as I was my rookie year, and I still think I'm a good quarterback, and I don't know what people want from me, if they want me to be perfect. And part of me sitting in this chair went like, whoa, like, what do you mean, dude? People think you're great. And we didn't have time. There's a sponsorship element to the interview. Like, we're on a clock here. We didn't have time to truly explore it. But it was a little bit of a window, I think, into what he's going through right now with the new system. And clearly, this pressure to, in year 3, when you're supposed to take off, still on that rookie contract, heading into year 4, next year you get paid. And he's going to get paid. Like, this is the year where it's supposed to happen. And I think he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders to make it happen. But at the same time, he knew, Frank, that it's a work in progress.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to be clear. I think CJ Stroud is awesome. I think he is one of the 10 best quarterbacks
Right. No,
in the NFL.
we
I think if we are redrafting the NFL, I think CJ Stroud is one of the he's a first round pick. Let's put it that way. I have a world of respect for CJ Stroud, who, like your interview showed, he's one of the most thoughtful guys out there. He's one of the most talented guys out there. Yes, it does take time, but if we're going to sit here and complain about the Bengals doing Joe Burrow wrong, we should be spending more time talking about the Texans doing CJ Stroud wrong, because he's in a much worse situation than Joe Burrow's been in.
That point I'll give you. I don't think that the Bengals are doing Joe Burrow wrong anymore. I think you could have said that like 3 years ago, maybe. I don't really think they still are, especially when you look at the weapons they got him. They got all their 3 guys back. I think what I would ask you, Frank, is if you were the Texans, what 3 or so realistic moves would you have made this past offseason? I mean, like, it's not like you can just pull all the best players from all the teams and get every coach in. So, because as you mentioned, like Chicago, you think did plenty for Caleb Williams. Well, how well is that working out so far?
Yeah, not well. I'll give you that. But there were people of it. Drew Dahlman was available. Like they went out and got Joe Tooney, who's a very, very good player. They didn't trade the world to get him. I do think, and you know what, this goes back to, I've gotten so much of a hard time for the Will Anderson trade, right? Part of the ramification of that is he didn't have a first round pick this year to use on any offensive help for CJ Stroud. Like, I think they just could have allocated their resources a little bit differently and been more aggressive in fixing the line instead of just, look, they felt they needed to trade Laramie Tunsil for whatever reason. And I get that. Fine, cool. Your line stunk. But they didn't do anything proactive to fix this. They didn't go out and spend a lot of money. A lot of teams spent a lot of money in free agency on offensive linemen. Why didn't the Texans? Why did the Texans use some of their draft capital to move and get guys? Like, I just, especially with the offensive line and receivers too, I think the receivers are going to come along. I like Higgins. I like Noel. But I just wonder, they should have been a little more aggressive doing right by CJ Stroud, who, again, I think you could make the argument he has a worse supporting cast in the NFL right now. And I love Nico Collins. He's great. But what else? Like, what supporting cast?
But do you think the defense is that
Houston
bad?
Texans? No. Defense is good. I'm talking about offensively. Defense is great. Defense.
To me,
I
think fantastic. When you want to support a young quarterback, it's not about. Right. They have some injuries, but like I go back to what the Bears tried to do with Caleb Williams in his first year by giving him this great trio of receivers. And I don't actually think that's the best way to support a young quarterback. I get that CJ's not as young as he used to be. I think the best way is give them a great run game, give them a great defense, and take some of the things off so that they can go make those plays in the biggest moments because they haven't had all of the pressure on their shoulders early on. So I'm not saying that the Texans have done everything right. I just think that there is a sense of like, I don't think that the Texans would be better off if they didn't get Will Anderson and they got an offensive player this year who may or may not have panned out and probably wouldn't have been ready immediately.
Probably not. No, you're right. Will Anderson's awesome. No question about that.
And he's a culture setter as well on the defensive side of the ball. I agree. We also agree they're 0-2 and they need to win this week. I think we all agree on that. To be continued. And I also love that Jori gives people homework that has to be answered immediately. Frank, what are the 3 moves that you should do? I love that, and I'm like
I'm still waiting.
I love it. Like
Frank, texting Frank at like 1 a.m.
Give me your
Frank,
battle
where's
plans
your homework?
right now.
My homework.
I
didn't do homework at school, Jori. You're not getting it out of me either.
Coming up next on Inside Coverage, who is the best player in football? We'll tell you who Raheem Morris says is the answer. And you two have homework. Who do you say is the answer? That's next, Inside Coverage. It is Inside Coverage on Yahoo. We thank you for watching. This is the Wednesday show of week number 3. My name is Andrew Siciliano. We are here every Monday through Thursday in podcast form. Thank you for liking and sharing and subscribing. I know it's a broken record. And if you're watching on the TV or like one of these things, we thank you as well. The Yahoo app, YouTube, or yahoosports.tv, the brand new fast channel. Go find it. Frank and Jori are here as well. Who is the best player in football? This is what my old friend Mike Mayock used to call, when we would have meetings at NFL Network, low-hanging fruit. But it's fun. It's like, the barbershop conversation, the argument that you get with your buddies on text, or maybe it's just morning television, but we're going to do it. Why, you ask, are we going to do the low-hanging fruit? And Mayock used to sit in the meetings and be like, whoa. I am not doing that. Bleep. That's low-hanging fruit. Why? Because Raheem Morris was on the podium today after Bijan Robinson, or is it Bijan? And why are you still confusing me? Turned into a shapeshifter on Sunday Night Football. Here's what Raheem said.
Do you think Bijan's one of the best or one of the best players in football?
There ain't no doubt about it.
He does?
He does? You said the best player in football.
He's definitely the best player in football. Like, in my head, I don't care. He's unbelievable. Like, I love the kid. I love everything about him. I love watching him with the ball. I love his confidence. I love his demeanor. I love his mindset. I love the leadership. I love everything about him. And, like, it is what it is. I love the kid.
Bijan Robinson is in year 3 of his rookie contract, which means that he is eligible for an extension next March. And I guarantee you that soundbite will be clipped and sent from his agent to the Falcons saying, here's the number, please sign here. I don't think he's the best player in football, but I do think he is fantastic. I do think he, maybe with Saquon, is either the best back or 1A. It's hard to take that title away from Saquon after what he did last year with 2,005 yards. He is so special, Bijan is, that he makes every team better. But is he, Jori, the best player in football at any position?
At any position. I mean, I don't think so, but I think this is one of those things where every single team feels like they have the best player. And what's the downside in saying it? That you compliment your own guy and not Lamar Jackson or whoever you decide you want. So I think it's funny because there are so many elements of this and everyone has their own definition of, well, what are you in the locker room? Like, okay, Micah Parsons, I think it's pretty well documented. He was excellent on the field, but they didn't feel like he was the best locker room guy in Dallas. So are you the best player in football if you only have one and not the other? It's definitely funny to hear him say that, but I think it was kind of like, what do I have to lose? Though, as you mentioned, the contract.
Frank, is he the best player in football?
I love Bijan. Is that how we're going with it? I love Bijan. He's great. He is not the best player of football. I don't even know if he's the best back in football. Like Jonathan Taylor pops up in the conversation too. So is Christian McCaffrey. So is Saquon Barkley. So yeah, Raheem, like Jori said, hats off. Respect. You got your dudes back, but no, not the best player of football.
Okay, the best player in football. The right answer is Myles Garrett, who led the NFL with TFLs last year, 22. Obviously, he didn't lead the NFL in sacks. That was Trey Hendrickson. And cumulatively, the last 2 years, Trey Hendrickson has the most sacks in the NFL. I know Steelers fans want to push back with TJ Watt, who I think had his first pressure in like 7 games last week. But Myles Garrett has 3.5 sacks, and he already has 6 TFLs. So 9.5 plays behind the line of scrimmage. I personally think he is the best when it comes to coaches also giving their players flowers. Kevin Stefanski has repeatedly said, both on and off the record, but on, as Raheem Morris did today with Bijan Robinson, that he says Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in the NFL. I think he's the best player in the NFL. There are only X number of players in the league that opposing coaches circle and say every single play we need to account for this guy. Zach Taylor all but conceded after week 1 that he had 2 play sheets. Well, it's probably 1 piece of laminated paper, but he had 2 play sheets. 1 play sheet for when Myles Garrett was on the field, 1 play sheet for when Myles Garrett was off the field. Joe Burrow, go back and look at the tape, had to call timeout twice week 1 and frustrated at that, the look on his face, because Garrett subbed in late and they had a play call that was running right at Myles Garrett. So he had to call timeout. And when you have a game changer like that, and Micah Parsons is also potentially that guy, that to me says you're the best player in the NFL. But then again, like Jori, Jim Harbaugh today said Derwin James is the best safety to ever play the game. So there are some coaches, and Derwin's a hell of a player. You saw it Monday night. There are some players, or some coaches rather, that just, they deal so much in over-the-top superlatives that they no longer hold value. And that is Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is so effusive with his praise for his guys, and there's method to his madness, clearly, and that madness works, and it is madness, that after a while, you just step back and go like, it doesn't matter what you say anymore, because it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think Frank, I would love to hear what you say about this, because I do think there's such an interesting conversation to have about what actually makes the best player in football. So, Frank, who would you say is the best player?
There's only one answer for me. Talk about low-hanging fruit here. I'm not going to get crazy on you. I'm not going to give you some weird answer. I'm going to go with the guy who is the best running quarterback we've ever seen in the NFL, who, oh, by the way, holds now the record for the best passer rating in NFL history. Like, are we kidding? That is unbelievable. And if anything, with Lamar Jackson, I don't think we appreciate him enough. I'm being dead serious. I think Lamar Jackson is already a top 10 all-time quarterback. I really do. We have never seen anything like this guy before, and I hate that we tie so much of his legacy into the fact that he hasn't made a Super Bowl. It's still a team game. Individually, Lamar Jackson is unlike anything we've seen. The combination of the best running quarterback of all time and the guy who is the most efficient passer of all time should not be allowed to exist. I never thought that would happen in my lifetime. This answer is Lamar Jackson. It's very easy for me. He's incredible. I love watching him. And I root for the Ravens to win a Super Bowl just to get rid of this dumb narrative of, oh, Lamar's not that great because he has... Stop. Lamar Jackson's awesome, and we should be appreciating a guy who we've never seen before, and honestly, we're never going to see again.
No, I definitely think that's fair. And I think that there is this element of, as you guys know, I voted for Josh Allen for MVP last year, but Lamar Jackson over Josh Allen for the All-Pro ballot, because I felt like Lamar was the best player / best offensive player in the league, but he wasn't required to do the same amount for his team as Josh Allen because of having Derrick Henry. But as you guys know, I had third choice on this one. And so I was like, okay, I'm not just going to replicate it. I don't want to just say Lamar. And in my opinion, Frank, you had already claimed the best offensive player in the game. And Andrew, you had claimed someone who, I wouldn't say there's anyone for sure better defensively. Is there a corner who's great? Yes. Did I think about Fred Warner and initially tell our producers that? And would I have been happy to defend that? Yes. But I think we need some special teams love on this show. And I think on top of that, you said football. You didn't say American football. So when you talk about American football and non-American football, I am going with Brandon Aubrey. And I think that
there's a lot of Brandon Aubrey love on the podcast this week, I'll tell you.
With Andrew's criteria of who is opposing coaches circling on that, who are they planning accordingly? The New York Giants repeatedly said this week, we knew we could not let them cross the 50. We knew we had to think about that with field position. That is someone that opposing teams are now planning for. And who is helping the Cowboys to more wins than Brandon Aubrey right now? And get 2 games, but I'm going back to last year as well. 65-yard field goal last year, 64-yard this year. He's not missing kicks yet. I mean, I think that he has a case for it. Again, he is doing his job differently, the same way Fred Warner is doing a different job than Lamar Jackson and Myles Garrett. But I don't think anyone is doing Brandon Aubrey's job better than Brandon Aubrey. And if you're taking all forms of football around the world, because we want to be a global show, the NFL is going global, didn't you hear? Brandon Aubrey would have more ability to dominate the global football stage than any of the people.
It is interesting, and he is a weapon, and I didn't see that one coming. But you are right that he is a weapon, and teams are fearful is the right word. But I used to say about Justin Tucker, like hosting the Red Zone channel back in the day, that Justin Tucker did his job better than any other player at any other position did their job.
That's fair.
Ever. And I know that's a very high bar. You got to think about that for a while. Like, you could argue that Jim Brown did his job at running back as well as anyone has ever done their job at running back. You could argue Jerry Rice did it. I mean, there are ways around that conversation where, you could punch holes in my argument there. But Brandon Aubrey, if he could do it for a few more years and reach that Justin Tucker longevity, then I mean, look at this. 64 yards the rest of the NFL. We're in year 106 of the NFL.
That's crazy. We talked about this, Andrew, that when he went out for that 64-yard field goal, which was tied for the 3rd longest in NFL history, everybody knew he was going to make it. Everybody. I don't think there was anybody like, there's a little fire for Brandon Aubrey. We're like,
would have been surprised if he missed it.
It's unbelievable.
But it would have been. It would have been also the fascinating element about kickers, too, is while you are dependent on the conditions, you're not dependent on the other team. I mean, if they do something really crazy, they're probably going to get flagged for it. If you're a quarterback, well, maybe you play great when you're not under pressure, but not when you are. Maybe you play great against a 4-3 team, but not a 3-4. kicking does have a little bit more. It can go above beyond the opponent. And so I do think a really good kicker has a different type of value than a offensive or defensive player that most succeeds against a certain type of opponent. Like, this is more scheme agnostic.
Real quick here. Let's hit TNF, and we're going to use Josh Allen because Josh Allen could be part of this conversation as the best quarterback in football to transition. Because I thought it was interesting what Tua said today. Today's Wednesday, so he must have been on the podium. No, Tuesday. He was on the podium Tuesday. I'm losing track of days. It's week 3 already. So it's the Dolphins and the Bills for TNF to open it up in Buffalo. Miami's 0-2, and they're desperate, and Buffalo is 2-0. What Tua said about Josh Allen was basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, he does things that I can't do. Like, physically, I can't be Josh Allen. Like, he is so special. And very rarely do you hear one say something like that when comparing themselves to a peer. Like, there's, like, he's really good, I'm in awe of the guy, like, much respect. But to actually say, like, I can't do those things. Like, I'm just almost like I'm playing a different sport. It kind of put into focus for me right now where the Dolphins are. Like, they're 0-2 and they need this, and they know that if they lose this and they lose badly, Frank, and they go to 0-3 on national TV, losing to a division rival again with the mini bye coming up, it is getting late early in Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm reminded of the Charles Barkley quote when the 92 Dream Team was happening. I don't know who Angola is, but Angola's in trouble. And the Dolphins in this game are in trouble. Like, the Dolphins have the worst secondary in the league, and you're facing Josh Allen. Good luck, guys. And look, you guys know, I think you know by now that I dabble in the betting world too. And I look at it this way. The line is 12.5. It's, I think, the largest line of the season so far. Ravens, Browns was probably 12.5 too. If the Miami Dolphins don't cover that spread, and I know Stephen Ross isn't exactly sitting around saying, are we going to cover or not? But you could just imagine it. If the Dolphins lose by 2 or more touchdowns in this game, and Stephen Ross has some extra days to think about all this, I don't know if I'd be answering my phone if I'm Mike McDaniel. I hate to say it that way. We've talked very flippantly about Mike McDaniel's future, and I hate doing that because he's a really good guy, and I've liked him as a coach. But if you're 0-3, your season's pretty much done. You have maybe one of the most talentless teams in football right now. That roster's bad. You know it's not going to get any better. I don't know. Yeah, if they go out and lose 42-20 or something like that, which is perfectly on the table. That's what the Bills just did to the Jets. Yeah, Mike McDaniel at that point would be on borrowed time, I think.
Yeah, and I think also you have to ask yourself what's actually reasonable against the Bills, because we saw a Jets team that just played the Bills, and before that, they'd played the Steelers, and the Jets looked good. Justin Fields, the running offense, everything was working. The defense, they got 4 sacks on Aaron Rodgers, and all of a sudden the Bills come to town, and the Jets can't do much of anything. Well, that's a team that had some success against a team. I just feel like with this Dolphins team, you really have to ask yourself. And I mean, if I'm Stephen Ross, I'm not even necessarily being like, if you lose, that's anything. I'm like, I just want to see something. I want to see the fight from the team. I want to see that you can have a little bit of offense against the Bills, because I think it's almost unrealistic, and maybe this is crazy, to expect the Miami Dolphins defense to be able to slow Josh Allen when you've seen what he's able to do and what he's able to do with that offense. And so I think you need to be realistic. I will say, though, the one thing the Dolphins have going for them is sometimes Thursday games are just weird. And I don't mean from an injury standpoint, although they're obnoxious from an injury standpoint, and that's a whole other health and safety conversation we should have. But I do think that sometimes just like the exact opposite of what we're expecting happens when they're not playing on Sundays.
Exactly. Don't be Dolphins, be Land Sharks. Actually, ma'am, I'm a Dolphin. No, be Land Sharks this week. The Dolphins and the Bills for Thursday Night Football. We'll be back on Thursday for another edition of Inside Coverage. For Jori Epstein, for Frank Schwab, my name is Andrew Siciliano. We thank you for listening, for watching, for sharing, for liking, for subscribing, and for being part of this show. So long, everybody.